Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pigskin Paisanos show. I am Paul. We are doing week one matchups, starts and sits for this upcoming week. And we are just going to jump right into one of the games I'm really excited about, which is the Atlanta Falcons at the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, so we're going to start here with the Falcons. So with your starts for the Falcons, as much as Matt Ryan just bothers me, I don't know how, but the Falcons just find ways to have an offense that looks amazing, and then all of a sudden it just falls apart. A la their game against the Patriots, where they were winning by all these points, and then just blew the game and lost a shot at winning a title. So again, though, Matt Ryan produces as a fantasy QB. He's always going to be there. So you got to start Matt Ryan. You got to start Julio Jones. He's going to kill it this year. Devontae Freeman, I know he's coming off a season where he was hurt. However, Freeman's back and Coleman is gone. And the only guy in competition is Ito Smith. And Ito Smith, even with Tevin Coleman there, he didn't even take over that role. So, Freeman is going to go back to his old role again. I think Freeman is definitely a bounce back candidate. He can be a solid play. But again, you are facing the Minnesota defense. So even though you're starting these guys on the Falcons, just don't expect top level kind of production. You are facing a good Minnesota defense, but you have to start Ryan, Julio, and Devontae Freeman. I am sitting Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu. I had Ridley last year in my league. Besides, those few games where he really did well, especially that one game where he just went off for 3 touchdowns. I mean, Ridley has really been pretty mediocre. He's more of a wide receiver 3 than he is anything else at this point. But he obviously has the upside to perform like a wideout 2, especially if Julio Jones went down. So to me, Ridley is really just more of like Jones's handcuff and a guy that you have as a flex. But because they're facing the Minnesota Vikings, I would sit both Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu. Sanu, look, he's one of those guys that has that safe floor. He's always going to give you a few catches, maybe like 40 yards or more a game. But again, nothing sexy about him ever. But I would just sit him, especially against this defense. Austin Hooper again. I like Hooper as a underrated tight end that could really perform well this year. However, again, I would sit Hooper in this game. So that's the Falcons. So guys, going to the Vikings. So right now, Stephon Diggs is dealing with another injury. The guy gets hurt so often, and I am a huge fan of Diggs. I think he is a supreme talent, one of the best wideouts in football talent-wise. The dude just can't stay healthy for a consistent long period of time, and every time he flares up on the reports of injuries, you always have to temper expectations with Stephon Diggs, because whenever he goes on the injury report and then comes back to play, he is notorious for not playing at the level that you want him to. So, however, you can't draft Stephon Diggs and sit the man unless you know for sure that he's not going to play. So I am starting Stephon Diggs. He is my wide receiver 2 with that wide receiver 1 upside. I would say because of the injury concern that he's probably not going to hit the wide receiver 1 this week. But Adam Thielen, you're starting Adam Thielen, one of the craziest seasons last year of any wideout I've ever seen. Just like had over 100 yards in so many games last year. So Adam Thielen is a rock solid wide receiver 2 with that 1 upside. The Vikings threw the ball so much last year. It was actually very, very shocking to me to see how much they actually threw it last year. And so Diggs had 149 targets last year. Thielen had over 150 targets. So these guys, the whole offense revolves around them as far as a passing perspective goes. So you are starting those 2 guys, but the Vikings said, and we all know now that they want to go more run heavy. So because of that, and because Dalvin Cook is back, you're starting Dalvin Cook. I mean, this guy looked really good in preseason. It looks like he's going to have a bounce back year. As long as he stays healthy, you are starting Dalvin Cook every day. I mean, I would say, Dalvin Cook is an RB1, but he's more on that borderline. So, but against Atlanta, I would start Dalvin Cook. Wild card, Kirk Cousins. So Kirk Cousins is an enigma. I mean, in the beginning of last year, he was so good. He was putting up, big time games, and then from week 12 on, I believe he had under 250 yards passing in every single game, and he just was so mediocre. So, however, I would, just like Dak Prescott, if you have a 2 QB league, you start Kirk Cousins as your second QB. If you're in a QB1 league, I would sit Kirk Cousins just because of how he ended last season, and because of the health of Diggs. If you have only one wideout, and you have that uncertainty, you have the run heavy kind of mantra that you've been hearing out of Minnesota now. So I would just wait and see on Kirk Cousins if you're in a league with only one quarterback. So, and you're also sitting Kyle Rudolph. Rudolph, to me, he's a guy I know he just signed a contract extension recently, but I just don't really see him being that fancy relevant in this game. I'm sitting Kyle Rudolph, and as I mentioned before, Minnesota defense, you are starting them, especially against Atlanta. I know Atlanta has a pretty good offense, but they have a tendency to fall apart and cause a lot of turnovers. So I would start the defense of Minnesota. So to kind of summarize, you're starting Matt Ryan, you're starting Jones, you're starting Devontae Freeman, you're sitting Ridley, Sanu, Austin Hooper, you're starting for the Vikings, you're starting Diggs, Thielen, Cook, and only Cousins in a 2 QB league. You're sitting Kyle Rudolph, and as I mentioned earlier, you are starting the Minnesota Vikings defense. All right, guys, so thank you again. This is Pigskin Paisanos signing off.